We just had an announcement today that the last 6 months of weather has been the hottest in the recorded history of the world. Paul, who is in Dallas, writes, "Hi, Art. We're burning up here in Dallas, even with the window air conditioner on. As a matter of fact, in Texas now, there are over 20 dead with the high temperatures. Out west here, the temperatures are also absolutely outrageous." Richard, do you have anything to say about this weird weather that we've been having?
I mean, that's one of the reasons I wrote this paper. As we said on the last show we did, when we talked about the hyperdimensional physics model, for many years, since actually the late 80s, 88, 89, when Torrin and I figured out the geometry at Cydonia and then compared notes with Stan Tenen, and Stan pointed us in the direction of some of these hyperdimensional models which have existed in the mathematical literature for over 100 years.
Right.
I have wanted to put together the meat on the bones to really, put teeth into the idea that all of these weirdnesses, all of these strangenesses, all of the things that people are talking about, that you talk about, that listeners call in about, that various guests talk about, all have a coherent theme and could be explained by an appropriate model. Now, I never imagined that it would be the hyperdimensional model that would ultimately wind up making very specific predictions and probably is going to be the explanation that ties all this stuff together, but that looks like where we are going. So while you were in Paris, in fact, even before, I sat down and finally did what I've been threatening to do for 10 years, and I put together a very comprehensive 50-page with all the links and references, including to our earlier work, the Message of Cydonia paper, which is also on our website. And we put that out there now to basically let everyone, both technically literate and technically non-literate alike, have at this model and look and basically critique it to see if it makes sense. And what it does, Art, is it pulls together a lot of these disparate threads, and it makes very important predictions, among others, regarding the weather, or climate. We should actually talk about climate, because that's the long-term trend of weather.
Right.
And geophysics, or Earth changes. And what we tried to do is to back up the hot-button issues that everybody talks about, weather and earthquakes and stuff, with a lot of other data that is more subtle and more technical, but is equally critical, equally important. And I've had a range now of feedback from physicists and astronomers. I mean, even Tom Van Flandern, who is, as I said earlier in the show, an exquisite thinker, a pioneer in his own right, who does not see eye to eye with me on everything. And I pride myself that he and I respect each other enough that we can disagree. We can agree to disagree.
Right.
He called me up, and he said, first of all, he says, I need page 12. I'm missing page 12. So I promised to send him page 12. The second thing was, he says, I'm not convinced, but I'm very impressed. And he says, damn it, it's really getting to me. This is interesting.
Yeah, I've got to say that that's the response I've been getting, too. I've had a lot of emails and faxes, Richard, from people who say it's a very cogent presentation there. And while they previously have not understood altogether what you were saying, they do now. So it's quite well written, I guess.
Thank you. And again, what I'm looking for are both technical feedback from physicists and astronomers, astrophysicists, and others who will know the minutiae of what we're referring to, and who will be able to read some of the links, like Whittaker's papers, that for the first time in almost 100 years, except for Tom Bearden's publishing of them, have seen the light of day. These are papers that literally, almost 100 years ago, united gravity and electromagnetism in a way that everybody thought Einstein did, but he was not the first. Maxwell and then later Whittaker were actually the first to really do this. And many other technical aspects of this. I want technical feedback because...
Okay, well, listen, but for the layman, when we begin to see all this volcanism, and there's a lot of it going on around the world right now...
There is.
The latest being the earthquake a couple hours ago at Mammoth. And we see this incredible, profound weather change I saw pictures of crops earlier tonight on CNN in Texas that were burned literally to a crisp. I mean, they simply don't exist. They're gone. Why? What's going on?
Well, the Gore model, Al Gore,
Yes.
Vice President of the United States,
Yes.
is taking his cue from the experts that are talking to him at NASA, at NOAA, various agencies like that. And they're basically saying, okay, Al, this is global warming due to fossil fuels. All right? The bigger view is that that may be a small component of it, but it can't be affecting the weather on Mars. It can't be affecting the weather on Titan. It can't be affecting the weather out on Neptune. There is a solar system set of changes, which if you follow the literature...
Okay, are you saying that there are similar changes taking place on Mars, on Titan?
Yes. And they're cyclic. As I point out over and over again in this paper, the hyperdimensional paper on the website, the key difference between the hyperdimensional model and all the other models is the hyperdimensional model predicts variability. Very strong variability, both short-term and long-term. So you will have a trend where it will get very, very hot for a while, and then it will change and it will get very, very cold. The El Nino, for instance, if you've been watching the NASA site, in 1 week they went off the Galapagos from El Nino conditions, very warm, very desert-like conditions around the Galapagos.
Right.
And in 1 week they went to cold water where they've had algae blooms that are the greatest they've seen in 100 years. 1 week. Now, geophysical changes normally take place over, years or decades.
Very slowly.
Or very, very slowly.
Yeah.
A characteristic signature of the hyperdimensional model is very short-term changes because this stuff is not normal thermodynamics. It's changes in the way heat is actually exchanged between atoms and weather systems and volcanoes and the mantle of the earth and the surface and processes that are explainable by long-term processes don't apply to these processes. So the prediction is you're going to see a lot of very rapid changes in all kinds of things that are unprecedented because the long-term model, our model, says we're entering into a period in the whole life cycle of the solar system where things are going to get a lot more interesting, a lot more chaotic, a lot more changeable, and the short-term effects will be weather, hot, cold, changes in jet streams, changes in weather patterns, changes in everything.